Yeah, baby, we're back!
Yes, and how thrilled am I?
Wow. What an honor.
It is very much an honor. It's always, we've had a couple of the Major League Soccer folks come in here.
At this point now, we've had every host of Extra Time.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah. Have we ever been on Extra Time? No, we haven't.
We have not.
No. Has it ever even been suggested that we've been? No, absolutely not. No.
Oh, no.
Right away. Right. I haven't even mentioned this person's name yet, and I'm making them uncomfortable.
It's totally fine.
Welcome to the Cooligans, folks.
But
Neil is blushing. I can see it from here.
We are absolutely thrilled to have this gentleman on our show. Please introduce him, Alexis.
MLS legend. MLS front office legend now. Writer of your favorite soccer book that I've asked Christian to read the cliff notes to me of. One of my favorite people I've ever gotten to meet in the soccer world, and
came to our birthday
party.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, unless you're driving, you know what, and even if you are, pull over so you can put your hands together for the one, the only, Bobby Warshaw, everybody!
Bobby, what's up, man?
Is that because I bought you the first round?
Absolutely. And which led to me apparently being so drunk, I don't remember a lot of what those Instagram stories suggested I did and said, wow.
Yeah, Instagram stories for Alexis are like the movie Memento.
Yeah.
Just everything.
Oh, my God. You know, what was that movie where Adam Sandler was a 50-50 first dates or whatever, 500, where he had to keep playing the girl lost her memory?
Yeah.
That's what Instagram stories are for me. Like, oh, my God, that's what I do for a living?
Have you guys done a deep dive into Adam Sandler's career yet?
No, we haven't.
We haven't. I mean,
not
even a show topic.
As a fan, I'm sure it is.
So before we...
He's a Tigres fan.
Is he?
Yeah.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not.
Yeah, Rob Schneider made him a Tigres fan. Did you know Rob Schneider's like the mascot of Tigres?
No.
You didn't know this?
There's some things I just don't believe in this world, and Adam Sandler being a Liga MX fan is one of them.
Rob Schneider and Adam Sandler have been to multiple Tigres matches.
That's interesting. I'm gonna Google this very quickly. But before I do that, I do want to ask
him and Ben Bear.
Go to the games
okay,
together.
look this is a photo of Rob Schneider and Adam Sandler in Tigres jerseys. So, okay, look, it's only been about 60.
Adam Sandler looks like he doesn't even know what jersey he has on.
That's just how he always looks.
You know, it's been about 60 to 80 seconds of this show, this interview, and we've already proved Bobby Warshaw wrong.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Feels pretty good, I gotta say.
What did I tell you? We're not going to let Bobby and Warshaw get away with this whole contrarian thing. We're going to Google everything. We're going to call them out. None of these mystical questions.
One thing I do... So I did read your book. I've been reading it for the last, 8 to 12 months. It takes a long time for me to read. No, I read the book. It's so good. And one thing that kind of permeates throughout the book is the level of intensity that Bobby Warshaw has. And before we talk about soccer, I do want to talk about a story that Alexis told me a couple months ago when you went to a comedy show of his. Mm-hmm. Correct, right?
Yes.
And
came out New York Comedy Club. It was amazing.
Really cool. Thank you for supporting, our comedy, which is very nice, right? But after your set
began the psychological warfare.
So I just want to ask about and get your side of it, because Alexis said, like, wow, he was like pretty intense talking about my comedy and like maybe
very complimentary in a good way. But then as he leaves, he drops a Jose Mourinho-esque. Yeah. Hey, I thought you were going to go this other way with a joke.
I've thought a lot about this. Okay,
so have I.
So for one, we're talking about just the comedy set. I'm super fascinated by the mechanics of things, right? Like you guys are up here. We do.
I thought you were
soccer.
Fascinated by the Mechanicsburg of things.
Yeah,
right.
That's my guy.
Hometown shout out.
So I'm just fascinated by the mechanics of things, right? Even our job. People think we just come up here and put a mic in front of us and talk about soccer. There are mechanics to doing the job well. Same with comedy. How do you sell a joke? So I'm fascinated by that. Giving you feedback, I feel like in our profession, we're all independent contractors, whatever you want to call it, small business owners. No one ever gives us feedback about anything. A lot of people say, do your bosses zero feedback, right? I'm sure you guys are the same, right?
I do not believe Greg Lawless bites his tongue in any situation.
There's just so much going on. So for you, as a friend, I see you do something you care about, and I probably gave it in the wrong way since I have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, you know what it is that you were like, hey, I'm not sure. It was a joke. I don't remember, but at one point in the joke, I thought you were going to go this way, which would have gotten a big pop, but you went this way. And now I'm left to dissect my entire set and try to figure out Wait, what is Bobby Warshaw?
I couldn't even remember what the specific joke was. That was the best part.
This is driving me nuts again. Imagine you go to your, the men's national team coach comes out to, who was Bruce Arena when you were playing, right?
Yeah.
He comes
no,
out
Bob. It was Bob.
Bob Bradley comes out to see you play, and he's like, hey, man, that was great. I'm glad I got to see you. Hey, I thought you were going to do this one thing on the field at that 1 minute, but then you went a different way. Would have been great if you did the other thing. Now you're like, well, then toss everything out I've ever done. I need to figure out how to get on this men's national team. That's essentially what you did. Which, by the way, all well-spirited, all well-meaning.
Nothing,
it was dope.
none is negative.
Honored. But when you left, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to pull all my hair out
But you
tonight.
crushed it, dude. The show was awesome. If people are in New York, they have to go see it.
Yeah, so that was the thing. So when he told me that, I was like, oh yeah, that's how Bobby is.
Yeah, that's Bobby.
That's what Bobby does.
Bobby doesn't just get in the heads of other players on the other team. He also does the comedians. I was in his pocket. I was like, where do I go? Where do you want me to go?
It's
I
just
was holding his
amazing.
little pocket.
He's that competitive. Where
Yeah.
He's trying to get win in every sort of scenario.
I was like, I don't know how I would have played against this guy. He's just that good.
So yes, I do want to talk about the book and
How long has it been since it's been out, by the way? 3 years now?
It's about 2 years. It'll be 2 years in August.
2 years.
So one thing that was interesting, especially at the end of the book, at the epilogue, you were very. This is why, and as comedians, this is where the vulnerability and the sincerity, where I'm like, I want to give you props because you're much more maybe self-aware than I think casual Bobby Warshaw viewers sort of understand. Where you were like, writing this book was a nightmare. This was really hard for me, and interviewing people and talking about my past and figuring all this stuff out was made me more introspective than I necessarily wanted to be, and it was difficult and challenging to do. So I guess the first question would be, why did you do it to begin with?
So I think there's two answers to that. One answer is I think I needed to apologize, maybe to the world, maybe to myself, for all of the things that I had done. Because you get through the book, and one of the takeaways is you have to. My competitive advantage is I could hold my teammates accountable. I could perform at a certain level every single day. That often meant being mean to teammates. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
It was the right thing to do in a soccer sense. When you step back and you say, from a human perspective,
not mean in the sense of like you're kicking people's food out of it. Like you had to be like forward, direct.
correct. You're
Right.
not good enough today. Your work rate, your intensity, you didn't show up on time. All of those things took a toll on my soul, saying, this is the right decision in soccer. Is this a type of human being that I want to be? So I think I had to apologize. But two, it just gave me something to do. You hear about all these professional athletes retiring and being lost. This gave me a purposeful project when I was done playing.
What is that? What I don't know. You've probably answered this multiple times, but the mindset of an MLS player is very different than the mindset of players in other countries. Especially the era you were playing in. When you were nearing your retirement, what went through your head as you were getting ready to leave the league? Because we've gotten to the point now in the last about 3.5 years where we've been able to communicate with a lot of players, and some of them will just be very honest with us and be like, yeah, man, I got to get my real estate license when I'm done, or I got to go do this. And for us, it's like just shocking to hear, like, God damn, man, you're doing so amazing. You play for the national team. It's amazing that you have to now go start another career. You know what I mean?
And we would talk about this while we were playing, making $55,000, while our friends were maybe not making more, but on their way to making more. We were very aware that we would have to start over at some point and start from scratch. And it was scary.
What went through your head? What were you contemplating? Because you found your
Yeah.
way, and I know you don't like to hear this, but you're essentially an entertainer now. You're essentially in the soccer media.
Yeah.
But you're not a journalist, so to speak, right? You do
I
write
would
for
not
MLS
use the
soccer.
J word. No, I would not use the J word.
So
no.
you're to some degree you're an entertainer. Like
Yeah.
you and I had a conversation at our birthday party where I was like, no, what you do, like even if people hate what you're saying, that's positive. And you were like, no, people tell me that all the time, and it's weird to hear that, but it is like.
It's an interesting week to bring that up, too.
Really?
It's an interesting week to
Oh, we're
bring
gonna
that
talk
up.
about it.
Oh, we're talking about it. But like, all right, people who hated Howard Stern listen for 2 hours. People who loved him listen for 1 hour.
Right.
So to some degree, getting any type
Yeah.
of reaction is a positive in your field. What made you want to go into this? Like, were you going to go take a Series 7 test? And you're like, I can't be that guy, even though you dress like that guy. You just didn't want to be that guy.
So my last year of playing was essentially, I was done, man. After what happened to me in Norway, I loved a club. My heart got broken. I was done. I was over it. I said, the struggle that this career is, this profession, is not worth it to me anymore. I came back to USL in Harrisburg as a transition year. I studied for the GMAT. I was going to go to business school. I studied all year. I applied. And then this job came up where they asked me to come to New York because I was local, do some videos, do some writing. I didn't suck. I wouldn't say I was good. I wouldn't say I'm good now, but I didn't suck enough to get another opportunity. And then they, got the studio. They needed more people. So it was never planned. I never weaseled my way into it. It was one thing led to the next. They needed someone who could do the job for a certain price point. I was single. I could move to New York, and it all just worked out.
I humble is something that is surprising to hear from you, because you seem like someone who carries yourself so strongly on the field and stuff. But you've done this a couple times when we've talked. You'd be like, I just didn't suck. Dude, it may be hard for you to understand, but you are great at what you do.
Thanks. That feels weird. That feels weird. Part of the job, and I think people out there, and we can probably get into this, people out there think I'm a certain thing. That's the job, right? You have to say something in a certain way in order to get people to listen with more energy, with more volume, with more directness.
Your cadence is important. All of those things are
important. That is the craft of this profession. So even though I sound like I undoubtedly think that this should happen on a soccer field, that's the craft of doing it. And then we can talk and be like, honestly, I don't know, man.
Yeah. Well, you've got charts behind you. You've printed up. And you're like, I really don't have no clue.
Not that you guys would look at them. We've already established that.
But it's like when your parents speak in this authoritative way, and then you get older and you're like, they didn't know anything.
Yeah.
They didn't know a thing.
But it's tough in the world of soccer, because it's one of those sports where it's not just the numbers. You know what I mean? There's so much that goes into it. So I love one of the things I love the most is the back and forth between you and Matt Doyle. Talk a little bit about how that feels to be sort of in this room and watch David Goss and Andrew Weeby just be sort of confused as to what's happening, getting to watch a tennis match.
Yeah. I think people know that Doyle is good. I don't think they know how good he is, the ability that his brain has to synthesize information, just a ton of information, into a coherent way for himself. And then the way he distributes that, not just his writing ability, which may be in the top 2 or 3 in American sports, his ability to use prose, but to explain things. I mean, with that said, I think I very much disagree with a lot of his assessments on soccer.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I'm right or he's wrong. It's just we would go about coaching, about running things, about evaluating in a different way. And it's all genuine. The thing I get so often is the fact that we manufacture ideas, we manufacture statements. We legitimately just see things differently. Sometimes we agree, but for the most part, we would go about the sport differently. And it's fun trying to show we're right, but also hopefully move somewhere that's a little closer to the truth for both of us.
And one of the disagreements that came up recently during it was a post game, right? Or
I actually don't even know.
Okay, so it's on the internet, so it's definitely in video form.
Yeah.
But you got a lot of heat after making a statement. I don't have the statement in front of me. Maybe you can repeat yourself about Christian Pulisic and implying or suggesting that he hasn't done enough to
use the right words.
In your opinion,
Warren and auto start.
Yes, thank you. That is the best way to put it. I should have consulted you before.
Text me, my guy.
Be like, hold on, Doyle. I got to double check, bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull in an expert. Alexis Guerrero. Laughter consumes the stage.
Yeah. That's been something.
Yeah,
that's been something.
So I know that on Extra Time you talked about it a little bit as well. But what is because obviously just like maybe on paper that statement seems fucking insane, right?
I gotta be honest, it seems fucking insane on paper, on my screen, coming out of your mouth.
Because as as maybe laymen's of watching U.S. soccer and watching the men's national team, to me it seems very clear that Christian Pulisic is, to me, the best player, but also the most sort of skilled and confident while playing.
Yeah,
that's my take, but maybe there's something I'm missing.
He's also played for 3 coaches, and he's 20 years old in the men's national team alone.
Let's talk about the mechanics of what happened, though. Everyone says that was a hot take. You're doing this for clicks. It was part of 60 minutes of content, and I couldn't even tell you if it was from the pregame show or the postgame show. Like, this isn't something that I plan to say. It's something I believe, right? I wouldn't say it if I didn't have plenty of mental evidence to support it. It's not something I've worked through. But the idea that I threw it out there for my own personal brand or that I got clicks for the first of all, I don't get there. Like, those clicks don't count for me.
Yeah, well, we're not implying that. Hopefully, I guess that must have been the general.
We're asking you about it so we get the clicks.
No, right? Of course. Yeah, so I would say that part hurts. I wish it didn't. I wish I had thicker skin. I wish that I could go with Alex and say, anybody talking about it is good. It hurts when people think that I manufacture it to be, I don't know, contrarian or prerogative.
Yeah, provocative.
My opinion is...
Maybe it's this side of the table, because it happens to me all the time.
So in terms of in terms of his position with the national team, it's not that he shouldn't start. It's not that he's probably not the best player. I think there's a legit conversation about him and Tyler Adams. It's the fact that if you go back through the last 9 games, and yes, he scores goals, but you can also go through plenty of players, and we can talk about the curse of the 10, which is a longer conversation. There's plenty of players who score goals that aren't playing their best or necessarily help the team. And I'm not going to argue Christian Pulisic hurts the team, but this idea that he has played well, I think, is wrong. I think it's been 9 straight games since Christian Pulisic has not just played to his level, but full-on played well back into that Trinidad and Tobago game in 2017 to Ecuador and Chile and England and Italy and all these games. So the obvious point is who takes his spot? Nobody. Christian Pulisic should start. This is the second part of the conversation.
I actually disagree. I don't think that's the easy point. I think the easy point is that you're expecting someone who's 20 years old to play to the potential that we all expect, not realizing this is part of that rise to that potential.
Playing poorly for 9 straight games?
Poorly or just not to your expected level?
Which is subjective. No, you're exactly right. And there's definitely extraneous variables, right? The different
If an
coaches.
MLS kid played that to the level he's played for the last 9 games, we'd be saying, oh my God, how's he only playing in MLS? He should be playing in Europe. But because you see this kid get sold for $73 million, you're saying, I expect more. You're not wrong, but this is the escalator to that.
I think that I think I generally subjectively disagree about his performances. He has moments that are phenomenal. That moment against Curacao, phenomenal, right? Only he can do that on this team, beating a player, serving that ball. But if you watch the general flow of his performances, I'm not sure he's been the best player on the field for the U.S. Maybe he has, and that's largely because of where the player pool is at. But I also don't mind sitting here and saying, if you watch the 90 minutes, I'm not sure that he has performed that well. Beyond the question of, is it enough for him to perform better than everyone else if he's not performing to his own ability, and how you help him get there?
Yeah, I think this is the process for him to be getting better. We're going to see his peak at 27. I think it's unfair to suggest that over the last 9 games we should have seen, FIFA meter at 100 across the board.
So when is it fair? When is it fair to say a player should be playing well on a consistent basis?
I think you know that when they stop performing. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what his potential will be until we see it drop, and we're like, oh, the player he was at his best a year ago. You know, that kind of thing.
I guess from what I take from what you're saying, it sort of sounds like from individual ability, he has skill there, and he shows some real promise and consistency. But when it comes to maybe fitting in with the team and his ability, are maybe he's not being used appropriately, or maybe he doesn't fit in with the team as well as you would like him to.
So I would say Zlatan is his ability doesn't fit in with the team.
Okay.
Right? You also have to remember, in this conversation, I'm full on Zlatan does not help the LA Galaxy, right? That's not Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic is not holding the team down, but I guess my point is not mutually exclusive to say he is way more talented than everyone else in the field, but also there's a question on whether the team as a whole functions better with him on the field. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And I'm definitely not saying Christian Pulisic weighs this team down. I just think you're simplifying the conversation if you're, as a coaching staff, not having that amongst yourself in your weekly meetings.
I think that's
daily
fair.
meetings.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think the other point is also we got to give Greggy Ball, to quote Total Soccer Show, let's give this system a bit more time before we start to decide who can or can't fit into it, especially the starlet of our system.
But he should start. I was never saying he shouldn't start, right? It was more a statement about his consistency of play.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. So we did have a question from Mike Thomas, a Gully Squad member. He did ask.
Shouts to Gully Squad.
He did ask about Bobby Warshaw. He says, does he hate Christian Pulisic because he's jealous about Hershey being the superior central Pennsylvania town? Is he sad that it has way more roller coasters and chocolate than Mechanicsburg?
Wow. Wow.
We're getting to the meat
I
of
just
this.
want to say, in the Keystone Division of the Mid-Penn Conference, I happen to go 6-1 again Hershey. That's neither here nor there.
Oh,
Neither here nor there.
Also, why'd you even say it? You know all our fans know that information.
The other thing to point, his dad was my favorite player growing up, too. His dad, Mark Pulisic, for the Harrisburg Heat. We used to go to the Farm Show Arena in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Mark Pulisic with his mullet was my favorite player.
Amazing.
Wow.
They called him Mullet Mark.
Yeah. Was his dad an auto start? You want to get into that?
So one thing that's interesting, and even you talking about the U.S. Soccer's coaching staff, U.S. men's national team coaching staff, and there is in your book book, there is a lot of there are a lot of stories of you sort of getting into it with coaching staffs, right? You have a history, and I could see why maybe and
because he thinks he could do a better job. Is that what you can say? Come on,
I
don't
mean,
act like that's not act like that's not a part of the.
I don't want to. I'm basing it off of what off of his words, right?
Right.
And there's a couple things I want to know about, but especially your time in Dallas and the coach
Shellis
Hyndman, right? So there was
You tried to break Shellis Hyndman.
what a this.
He just got it, by the way.
Anyway.
How often does this happen?
All the time.
Like, how often does he say something and you laugh for 5 seconds to let it click, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, that was good."
Most of it is him upset about what the emails we're gonna get.
Somebody has to keep the show going. This has been sort of a part of your history, right? And the way you talk to people in authority seems to be, when you were talking earlier, it made me think like, man, Bobby could be a coach, right? Like you sound incredibly like a leader, right? And that was definitely the character trait that I think you were given by a lot of the clubs that you played for. But what is that balance of like that leadership and then thinking like, did you go too far? Did it reach a level of arrogance where it could have hurt the team? You know what I mean? Like, so how did you sort of handle and balance those things?
Well, just to answer the Dallas question, right? I was the whipping boy for 2.5 years, right? It's not like I would challenge the coach on a daily basis. This was him being verbally and emotionally abusive, probably not beyond what other coaches do, but beyond what was appropriate for that Dallas team. And I wasn't the only one that felt that way.
Okay.
So I took it for two years and change, right? Until I was finally said, and this wasn't me chirping back. This was me just one time standing up and saying, no, like, bro, this is is too much. Everyone feels this way. I'm going to be the one to say it because I have nothing to lose. You're not playing me anyway, right? You're being abusive. I'm not going to take this anymore. And he didn't like that. He sent me down to Luchi Gonzalez's U16 team. I wasn't allowed to be around the first team. He was like, you're not even allowed to hang out with them.
Also, how old was Luchi Gonzalez back then?
Would have
Like
been
22?
He was young, man. He was just older than he was probably 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kid's been in the game for a minute, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it wasn't that I had been a disgruntled player for him or that I was a nuisance. It was
You weren't a locker room cancer. You were just like,
I was a great locker room guy. That's why they kept me around, right? He didn't think I was good at soccer. I was a great training guy. I was a great locker room guy, a great leader. And he would always use me to be the one to set the example, and I took it, and then I didn't. In Norway and Sweden, I mean, I gave it a year, right? I played for these guys for a while, and then you have to ask yourself, I guess you guys haven't had bosses for a while, but if you know that your boss is sinking the ship, is it better for you to go down with the ship as a good soldier, or should you stick up for it? Which makes you feel better in your heart? And it's something I struggled with on a daily basis because when you're a player on a team, when your coach is killing you, right? You know when your coach is sinking that ship. So do you take it? Do you look out for your own skin? Do you collect your paycheck and try and do well for the next club? My decision was I care about this club enough that I'm not going to let it just go down without a fight.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And one point I loved in that was in your time, I believe it was in Norway, when talking about relegation and how while you were playing, like that was always a risk for the teams that you were playing on, and the comparison between how the thought process behind how players handled the possibility of relegation and compared to how they handle it here, right? Where it does not exist, right? So that affects your psyche and how you approach like work every day. And then when you were talking to one of your teammates about the comparison between promotion relegation in Europe and the fact that it didn't exist in American soccer, and how they were more comfortable with the idea of soccer teams failing, but in the U.S. we're comfortable with people failing, right?
Yeah.
And like they don't deserve welfare and all that stuff. But our sports team always get propped up and make sure that they survive. So what was sort of being there and sort of explain? Did you have to like I don't know, explain things to them, or did they have to like sort of adjust to you or things like that? Were you too intense for them?
Scandinavians definitely had to adjust to what I was bringing, but that's also why they brought me over. I mean, they literally brought me over partially for my playing, but partially just because Scandinavians are so timid. They needed someone to come in and provide a little bit of edge.
Just be American as hell.
Totally. They
Show up in an American flag vest.
the American personality,
Yeah.
man. They would talk about that all the time. And I
Really?
could offer that. Yeah,
That's
but going to your question, we're a capitalist society that lets the 76ers get last for 5 straight years. And here you go. You can have Ben Simmons. You can have Joel Embiid. You can have Nerlens Noel. And this isn't a
It'd be
statement
nice
about...
if they did that for the Knicks. Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah, right?
Why don't they do that?
19 years
So,
straight.
so sorry, guys. Do you want to be Sixers fans now? We'll take you.
I'm going to be New York Liberty fan. That's it. I'm done with the Knicks.
So there's this interesting dichotomy between what the societies were like. Scandinavia, this basically the socialist community, but they would let clubs fail. And I was on clubs that we got relegated. And now 2 years later, they barely exist. And it's heartbreaking, right? You talk about this idea. It's fun to talk about promotion relegation. I think there's a really good convo to be had in this country that's not being had for a variety of reasons. But having lived through it, I mean, these clubs, these giant clubs get relegated, and if you don't make it back in a year, your budget is donezo, and all of a sudden your whole community, your whole town, your whole city doesn't have a sporting team to cheer for, which I know some people say, this is capitalist America, we should do that. But it's a complicated question, especially when you live through it and you see how traumatic it is for these cities.
Yeah, well, when you saw, I don't know if you watched Sunderland Till I Die, but like, yeah, I'm not a fan of Sunderland, but of course, emotionally, I'm like,
You become, emotionally attached
I don't even care about the players. I'm like, the assistants. I feel
Yeah.
bad for the assistants. Where are they going to go?
Yeah, oh no, who's going to answer the phones? You get attached to the whole. You don't think of as a team as a business. It's very rare that you think of it that way. I'm an Arsenal fan. Very rarely do I think like, oh, I gotta, hopefully they get a few more hires. I don't think of that. I think like I want players, not like a $6 million kid no one's ever heard of. Shouts to Martinelli. Thanks for coming. Like that's what you want. You want all these things. So when we talk about promotion relegation, I think everyone always associates the sort of the boost it would give to development more than what happens if you fail. You're like, well, we're not going to think about that.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to get promoted, right? Everybody gets promoted perpetually.
So the another thing also get Bobby's book on
It's incredible.
Amazon.
I know because he told me.
It's very good and very just touching. More than even if you're not a fan of soccer, the stories of traveling abroad and being away from family and taking these challenges. And one was your time. So I might get the teams sort of mixed up and stuff. What was the Angle Homes? Was that the team that you had the great year and all right, and then you just missed winning the title.
Yeah.
But then you decided to leave the next year.
Yeah.
And that reading it, I'm like, well, he had a good thing going. Why would he leave that situation, especially after having dealt with what he went through in Dallas? Why leave?
I ask myself that every single day. I could be playing in Champions League right now.
Yeah.
The people that didn't read it, right? I crush it for Engelholm. Dallas picks up my option. So I have to come back, right? They loaned me out. I didn't have a choice. I could have gone on strike and said, if you pick up my option, I'm out. But I didn't have the firm bid from Malmo, who was in Champions League the next year, or Helsingborg. There was rumors, there were conversations. There was no firm bid. So, do I go on strike? Dallas says no. My reputation MLS is ruined just for something that maybe comes together. I decided to be a wussy. And I look back, I was a wussy, right? You have one career. You have one part. Your agent doesn't fight for you. Your manager doesn't fight for you. You were the only one who fights for yourself. I got scared. I didn't do it. I should have.
I mean, that's hindsight's 20/20, though. I mean,
Right.
if one thing's not confirmed, you're like, I guess I gotta,
But I think I would have taken more risks. I mean, you took a risk. You quit your job,
right.
and now you're doing this. Do you regret that?
I got laid off, and I've never looked back.
I love
That's
them.
fair. But you could have gotten a new job in the same
100%,
industry.
Yeah.
That's
Like I
where
said,
I was going
I
with that.
never looked back. My wife looked back many times.
You're still
The
together.
beginning of the month, she's always like,
Congratulations.
yeah. She's like, are you going to help with this rent ever? But no, I did not look back. But there's times where I'm like, like any comedian has that moment where you're like, how long is I get the struggling artist, but we're not past that chapter yet. How long are we gonna make this chapter?
I was the brave one. I did quit my job. I quit my job on my birthday, and I just said
That's when you do it,
On
right?
purpose? Did you know you were going to do it on your birthday?
I sort of did. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna do it. Like, yeah, I gave like maybe a month notice. And I was like, this is when I'm done, and I'm gonna focus on comedy. And I have the mentality that it'll work out. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm not gonna be homeless.
Did you just throw the biggest banger that night? Was it like a double party in one?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't even know.
You left an IT job, not a coke ring. Yeah.
I didn't like.
Yeah.
It wasn't me like.
He went to a LAN
cashing
party.
in my 401k from my stockbroker job.
Yeah.
I didn't
Warm
go.
up the helicopter, boys. The kid is back.
Fun coupons, as they say.
Everybody, yo, I'm looking at Groupon right now. We gonna party.
But the challenges that just sort of life sort of brought you is what made me connect with. Like as an artist, as whatever, I think there's just truly a lot to relate to about taking those kinds of risks. And
yeah, we find a lot of similarities with athletes and comedy.
Yeah, I mean,
bodies no, but the going.
You wear
after
this
it.
jersey nice, dude.
Thank you. Yeah,
You
it's
look
a little
good.
bit bigger than I expected.
But
Thank you so much, Umbro.
If you had on a Panama jersey, I might think you were Torres.
Thank you. Okay, I gotta give me some big hair now.
So you did come back. Obviously, you didn't play in Dallas, but that you went to I don't know how to say any of the Gaius.
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 Okay. So that was in Sweden.
Yes.
Okay. So
Gothenburg, great city, by the way.
okay, cool.
Great city.
Really?
They have lunch buffets, so you show up, you pay your $10, and they just have all sorts of breads and salads. Great thing. We need to bring it here. Gothenburg lunch set.
Okay.
First of all, did not expect food to become a topic here.
I know how to play to the host, man.
Yeah.
I know how to play to the host.
this book I've read.
So, yeah, first of all, I want to say that what you said about not having to like soccer to like the book is the best compliment I could get. That's very touching because that was the goal. How can you make this about life? It's ostensibly about soccer, but it's really about these challenges that we all face, these problems. When we talk about the problem with your boss or the head coaches, I bet you so many people out there have that same thing going on, that same question going through their head. You talk about taking risks and moving and the chapter on relationships and sexuality. Ideally, I experienced them through soccer, but you experienced them in the same way, and it made you think about things in your own life and feel connected to.
Well, I mean, that's what we do, right? As a joke, I went through an experience, right, where, I thought I had cancer, and I'm like, how do I make this more universal? No, but it was, the point is, I thought I had
We've all
dick
been there,
cancer.
man. We've all.
The thing is,
If
dick
you
cancer.
haven't
I was
thought you've
trying
had
to-
dick cancer, you
I
are
was trying
lying.
to avoid saying the word dick on this podcast.
There's
but
all been that
whatever.
one night when we're like,
Yeah.
it's cancer. It's not me.
Swear
It's
to God.
cancer.
Does cancer burn when you pee? No, stop swiping right for 1 minute, Bobby. So I thought I had dick cancer. Long story short, when I tell this joke, it's very specific. How do I make this more
And
universal?
if we're talking about Alexis's dick, it's a very
Yeah.
short story.
Yeah. Oh.
Boom. Let's
But
do it.
but the joke is, the story is wider than you thought. Okay, so, son of a. All right. The point I'm trying to make is, how do you make something like that universal so that a woman in the audience who doesn't have a penis, or a guy who never had, a cancer scare, how do you get them to sort of relate? Not everyone who read your book played soccer, but they have something that they can relate to.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing that I found, reading it, I don't know whether to feel proud of you or sad,
Or dislike. Or just straight up dislike for large parts of the book.
Definitely. I think when I started reading the book, I only know Bobby through my phone and seeing him on MLS stuff and sort of seeing him argue with people. So you can see like, oh, he might be a little bit confrontational, a little difficult, whatever. But after reading a couple pages, I'm like, this dude is a sincere guy, and who again, like I mentioned before, very self-aware. And one thing I really, really enjoyed was when you came back and played in USL and how hard of a decision that was for you, because I loved speaking of, when we talk about people who are just gully as hell, and Bobby's one of them, because he was just straight up like, yo, it's just a bunch of trash dudes. Nobody knows. Nobody wants to play with any of these fools out there. And I love that. That's how
Saying it into a megaphone was a bit rough. I thought that was a little disrespectful.
I love the honesty, because while you're playing, and if you have a job, especially if you play in MLS, like you can't. We've spoken to players that you can't just go off on people because it's gonna hurt your bag, right? So I love that honesty about it. So how do you feel about that decision to go back and you play for the Harrisburg City Islanders? How was that decision? How do you reflect on that decision now?
It was the right decision for me because I needed a transition, right? I knew after Norway I was pretty done. You know, if I could have had a nice big career move, maybe to Israel, I could have made a nice paycheck. I could have lived in Tel Aviv.
That part was amazing in the book. Please check that out.
You guys been to Tel Aviv, by the way?
No, never.
Great. You would love Tel Aviv.
Food, I heard, is incredible.
If you folded the pizza, they would give you a look, but it's good.
Yeah. Oh my God. First of all, I'd be yelling at everybody, "Fold your pizza," unless you're like 18 and 20, because then I know y'all.
Shabbat shalom. Fold that.
Yeah, my brother. Fold.
So, if I didn't have a nice career move, I was ready to stop. I was ready to move on to whatever the next challenge was because I had stopped progressing. It stopped being a challenge, and it was a paycheck. It was a lifestyle. But I needed that transition. I hadn't been around my parents for 10 years, between Stanford and California to Texas to Europe. I hadn't been around them. I needed to be around them. My dad had just retired. He was bored. He had nothing to do. I think that he needed help with that. He probably doesn't like me saying that, but I think it was the right decision in that way. And that made me feel good to feel like I could help in some way.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's helped me train. I did the GMAT. I started the book. I got into conversation with Major League Soccer. So logistically, it was the right decision for me.
All right.
Not a great answer. When someone's like, logistically, it was the right thing to do, you're like,
emotionally, I have no clue, but logistically, it worked out. Look, at the end of the day, and I think this is one of the things that we talk about as comedians. You know, when we started this podcast, most comedians look at a podcast as like a side hustle, and Christian and I almost like treated this like it was our job during the day, and at night we do stand up. So like you never know where your career is going to lead or what choices you make will lead to something else. But the one thing I think at the end of the day, thank God you didn't stay with that team Anglesworth. What is it again? Anglehorns? Anglehorns?
Anglesporf.
Yeah, Anglesporf. Was
favorite.
it in Turkey?
I'm Anglesporf till I die.
Yeah. Anglesporf till I die. I'm Anglesporf till I die. I know I blurg. I'm Anglesporf till I die. Well, thank God you didn't, because you wouldn't have joined MLSsoccer.com. You wouldn't be on Extra Time, and you wouldn't be here.
Okay.
So
this is where it all culminates. In my head, I was like, that
Boom.
one day.
The peak of Bobby's career.
when you were a kid, you had a poster of the World Cup, and next to that was two somewhat successful comedians, one of which was losing weight, and the other one who looks good. And you were like, one of these days, I'll find a way to merge these two.
Well, like I did say before, please get Bobby's book. It's very, very good.
It's amazing.
Whether you are, again, a fan of soccer or not, or honestly, I've read a couple, I don't know, I've maybe read like 15 soccer books. It's like one of my favorites.
What's your favorite?
You put me on the spot. This one.
Okay. Think
Good
about the
answer.
others.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah,
hear at the
think
end so we can share notes.
Okay, cool. So that's it. Anything else you want to add, or maybe let me ask a couple questions from the Gully Squad members that we have. We'll see if we can get through these quickly. Ed Eberhard, who sent us that great artwork last week. Last week, he asked, "Will Cincinnati's bumpy 2019 change?"
Bumpy.
Bumpy 2019. very nice way to put it.
Cute.
Will Cincinnati's bumpy 2019 change the way MLS evaluates expansion candidates, cities / clubs?
No, because they got a check. So who cares?
Well, that was for Bobby,
I
not
know,
you.
but what's Bobby going to say now?
I think that was pretty. No, it's, 'cause MLS. Everything else has been great, right? The fans have been showing up, the buzz. Just because the team on the field and the way they went about putting that team in the field and the way they went about coaching that team on the field hasn't been good. So it was still a sound decision. Yeah, they demonstrated that the city of Cincinnati is right for an MLS team. So no, it definitely won't make them rethink
And when they
anything.
finally get one, oh my God, they're going to be good. Because right now they have the USL team.
Yeah.
Right, playing. So when they finally get an MLS team.
Yeah, it'll make executives and people rethink how they go about building the team, who they give the keys to, and what coaches they hire, and all that. But from an executive decision, no.
Okay, so then next up.
In other words, don't spend all your TAM and GAM on the draft. Okay, move on.
How are you going to disrespect Darren Maddox when you're wearing his jersey?
Shouts to Darren Maddox.
If you're going to, Darren Maddox is goalie, guys. I don't know how
he's-
you tell you this. He's
well
goalie.
Gully.
Okay.
No, he is official, part of the Gully Squad.
This is from Mike Chiara. He says, what are your thoughts on the state of lower league soccer in the U.S.? Would you recommend that a player play abroad in a second or third division there rather than in the States?
I would tell everyone to go abroad more for the life experience. Your career is a dice roll, right? I'm not going to lie to you. Whether your career succeeds is impossible to predict. It's one of these things I think about when we look at the under-20s and all these bright stars now. Like, if you're insane, if you try and project who's going to work out, with that in mind, go do something new. Go get paid to live in Turkey, to live in Germany, to live in Norway or Sweden. Get the life experience. Acknowledge, and I know this is hard, acknowledge you might not have Manchester United, and split the difference, play professional soccer, try and make the pathway work, but also get this experience, which will be hard, and you might not even enjoy life that much, but it's worth doing.
Yeah, go smash somebody in Turkey, dude. Come on.
Oh, and just be clear, he means sex when he says smash.
Yeah.
Because Turkey could be a little bit dicey with that kind of
Going
stuff.
back to the extra time invite.
Oh, is this why we don't get invited? Whatever, get a bleeper.
This question is from Jay Riddle, our friend Jay Riddle. He asks, why do they continue to disregard the soccer pillows collecting dust in their prop bin? Apparently, there's pillows, soccer pillows, in the extra time studio, in the MLS studio.
Well, going back to the idea of the craft of this, my first couple weeks we would sit on the couch and I would hold the pillow because it felt comfortable, right? That's what you do when you sit on a couch. You hold a pillow. A normal person.
That's only if you're laying on a couch and a therapist.
Holding the pillow felt right.
Yeah.
I would get yelled at by the producers. Not yelled at, right? They weren't scolding me, but they're like, Bobby.
You don't yell at Bobby Warshaw, trust me.
You saw what he did to Hyman.
Well, listen, you're a professional. Professionals don't hold soccer pillows while crouching over on a couch.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, sir. So I try and sit up straight. I try and have my hands on the table and do things like a professional.
All right, cool. All right, last two. This is from Jason Pena. He says, the U.S. men's national team has disappointed me with their Gold Cup play so far, to the point that I won't be surprised to see them struggle to qualify for the 2022 World Cup. Am I overreacting?
No, you're not overreacting. I think that's fair. It breaks my heart to say, and I should have said earlier in the show, I hate talking about the men's national team right now. It's just so toxic. It's so negative, and I'm not sure people are wrong, right? The player pool, the way they're playing right now, the potential lack of progress. I think that those are real concerns. Do I think they'll qualify? Yes. Do I think they'll get better? Yes. But I would not be able to talk someone out of thinking the opposite.
Got it. Okay. And then last question is from
here.
Kevin Brothers. He asks, outside of LAFC, how does he feel, how does Bobby feel about the Western Conference? Who does he see really pushing them?
You have to look at Portland right now, right?
Okay.
Have you guys seen Brian Fernandez yet? Have you got a chance to watch?
What is he, 9 goals in 10 games?
6 and 5.
Plus the Open Cup.
Oh,
I think he got a
correct,
couple,
yeah.
right? So he's amazing, especially at Providence Park. One of my, I would say, unique thoughts right now is FC Dallas is the second most cohesive team. LAFC are crushing people because they're talented, but also because Bob Bradley has built a machine.
Yeah.
Right? 11 guys working together like a machine. I think FC Dallas have the second best machine. The problem is that it's Jesus Ferreira and not Brian Fernandez or Diego Valeri. And talent, talent is a question. Those two, and obviously Seattle. It'd be interesting to see if SKC can get it back. I love the way SKC play, but they are just fumbling over themselves right now. So that's the big question for me.
Okay.
Can anyone in the East compete with them?
Yeah,
I know you're
LA.
a big Philly guy, but
I'm not sure. I'm still concerned about Philly in a big game. But if you're going to talk about Red Bulls, especially since we think LAFC will try and stick to their philosophy and pass, when you try and pass against Red Bulls, and you guys don't like to hear this, but you lose, right? There's a reason.
no, we've sat through a lot of that.
Yeah, right. Seriously, there's a reason Atlanta United did not try and pass. Everyone gets mad at Chris Armas for the way he played. Atlanta United was not going to pass against them because you can't. So if a team in the Western Conference in a single game in MLS Cup says we're going to try and pass through Red Bulls, they're going to lose.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. So I want to make sure we do. I want to do an outro with Bobby. So Bobby will be the outro of the episode, not just us doing it.
Okay.
Because I mean, we got to do it while he's here.
Of course.
Okay. So with that said, thank you again, Bobby, for doing the show. Again, make sure you get his book. The title of the book is called When the Dream Became Reality. And then the journey of a professional soccer player and the push to meaning, purpose, and contentment. You know how it is. His editor was like, it needs to be a little bit longer.
Yeah. Get more buzzwords in there for the SEO, baby.
But no, it's an incredible book. I really, really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. So, okay. So with that said, for Bobby Warshaw.
No.
Oh,
First, we have a gift for you.
we have the gift for you.
I've
Yes.
wanted this for so long.
Okay.
I know.
Can I tell you guys this is a thank you for having me on? I consider one of the honors of American soccer now to be invited on the Cooligans.
Wow.
I
Wow,
think it's a stepping stone. I think other people would agree with that. That to be invited with you guys is an exciting and a big thing.
That's
you
very
have no
sweet.
idea how much we paid him to say that.
More or less than
Yeah.
North Korea.
That's very sweet of you
Well,
to say.
he actually told us it's the same amount of his Engelflumsen's contract. So, which of course you all love that team.
That means a lot,
Yeah.
Bobby,
No,
especially
really,
coming
thank
from you. It's we're trying our best to make sense of all this stuff.
What
you
the
know?
hell we're doing, we don't know, but we're doing it.
So thank you again. So with that said, for Bobby you know how we end the show. For Bobby Warshaw.
Well, don't forget, we also had our segment where we reviewed the women's national team winning.
Yeah,
just now.
That's right. We did do that.
So we literally just cut this.
I'm back
Yeah,
real quick.
Bobby's back.
for
Bobby's
the
back.
exit.
We're gonna say goodbye. So go ahead.
So for Bobby Warshaw, my name is Christian Polanco.
I'm Alexis Guerreros.
And together, what are we?
The Cooligans!
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
What's up? It's the world champion, Judah Friedlander, and you're watching the Cooligans. Why? Because you're cool. This is what winners look like right here, man.
I mean, you're looking at us.
Right now with my legs, I just juggled the ball 80,000 times.
You missed it.
Yeah.
He's been playing keepy uppy since I met him.
Yep, look faster, guys.
Go Team USA.